Hello, everybody, and welcome back to episode number 10 of the Football Unfiltered podcast. Liam, mate, how's your week?
All good, mate. All good. Disappointed about QPR's result yesterday, but other than that, football, the FA Cup weekend was all good.
Yeah, we've got a lot to touch on, don't we,
yeah.
again this week? I know we say it all the time, but we don't ever really catch up during the week until we come on. We talk for a bit and then we jump on live. So we do have a lot to touch on, especially, I think, the biggest result of the weekend we'll talk on later. But you're going to kick us off. We're not going to go through the news first. We're going to go through last week's predictions and our new league format, which we are going to be trying to implement into every week now moving forward. So, over to you.
Yeah, look, so this week we'll go through the results. I'll go over the rules quickly again. So me and Callum, we both predict 6 games. We get a choice of pick the winner and the correct score. If you get the correct score, that's 3 points. If you get the correct team to win, that's 1 point. If you get it both, obviously then 4 points. So we'll start off with the first game, which was Man United versus Leicester. I unfortunately didn't watch this game. I don't know if you.
Yeah, I caught the second half. I saw the first half goal as well, so I caught the best bits really.
But I thought from what I watched, it was quite a scrappy game. But United got the job done, which is massive for them and Amorim. Keep them in the FA Cup and something maybe they could go and win, because as we've seen this weekend, a couple of big sides have dropped out of the FA Cup. But Callum, you predicted a 3-0 United win.
It did not. Did you? You had,
So
oh yeah, of course you did. I remember now. Yeah, no, wow. What I was not expecting it to be that scrappy. To be fair, I knew that it was going to be close, but 3-0. I thought United were going to be comfortably winning that, but never mind.
Yeah. And then so we moved on then to the Saturday games, which was the first one, which was Leyton Orient, Man City. Leyton Orient gave them a cracking game.
Apologies if you can hear anything going on in
unreal goal.
on my mic, by the way. Just completely dropped a little thing off my desk, but carry on.
Yeah, obviously a cracking game. Leyton Orient played so well. Great goal. Obviously, he's come off Ortega, but it was an audacious effort. I thought Leyton Orient just battled so hard. I'm going to talk from my perspective. QPR's lonely striker, Charlie Callum. What a game he had. But City, they look really poor, but I don't think they're going to care too much about that. They got the job done. They progress. And we'll talk about who they got in the draw after and talk about your perspectives of that. But again, we both predicted this would be a whitewash, to be honest. 5-0, didn't we? Both of us.
Wow. Just got you jumping in there. Yeah, I was watching it. I was on my way down to Plymouth to then talk about the result we will definitely be talking about. But yeah, I was on my way down. So I had the first half on the radio. And then by the time I got down, I could catch the second half. And yeah, what a game. Leyton Orient made such a good account of themselves. And I recently said, and I posted a photo on my the social pages talking about the FA Cup and the magic of it. I think sides like Leyton Orient, that just shows the quality that they can have on the big stage. Like, I'm not necessarily saying that they deserve to go through, but I'm just saying they made a massive and a great account of themselves and them as a football club, really. But yeah, we both predicted 5-0, so it's what it is.
Yeah, so look, there's a point for us both there. And I just want to touch on as well. I know, obviously, Leyton Orient lost, but you look at how they reacted yesterday. They got a 4-0 win over Mansfield. So you just think that the performances they've had over the last coming weeks in the league and also that FA Cup game, they've managed to build on that further. And look, they're in a playoff spot at the moment in League One, and I'm sure they'll keep pushing forwards and have an excellent end to the season. But yeah, moving on, I thought this was one of the games of the whole of the FA Cup. I know there was some upsets, but we go on to Birmingham versus Newcastle. What a game that was. There was so much controversy with, obviously, goal line technology not being used during the game. But yeah, 3-2 win for Newcastle. But my God, Birmingham gave it a right good go. Ethan Laird getting on the score sheet to start off with, and St Andrews was just, the atmosphere there was amazing, and that's what we love to see about the FA Cup.
Yeah, I totally
What are your
agree. I
thoughts
think
on
it was
that?
such a good. Sorry, I'm having a bit of an issue here. I keep dropping stuff off my flipping desk. It's the second thing I've dropped. Yeah, so I totally agree. I think Birmingham really made a good account of themselves as well. I think it does show that they do have the quality to not be playing in League One. But I do think they'll comfortably go up, so that's a different story. But yeah, I think they made such a good account of themselves playing against a strong Newcastle side who have midweek beat Arsenal. Well, knocked Arsenal out of the Carabao Cup, I should say, and then now are into their first final in a good few years. So they're a team high on confidence, playing well in the league. And Birmingham, I think, all but, like you say, there was a few controversial moments in there, but I think they probably deserved it a little bit more. Not because of maybe necessarily the chances they had in the game, but look at this club size and of Newcastle versus Birmingham at the moment. I think Birmingham actually made a better account than Newcastle did. I think Newcastle looked pretty average. They scored 3, admittedly, yeah, fine. It was quite a high scoring game, but I don't think they looked amazing, if I'm being honest. But yeah, I think it's one of those where we've seen the bigger team go through there, and it's unlucky on Birmingham.
Yeah, definitely. I think we'll touch a little bit more on Newcastle later. But on those predictions, Cal, you predicted a 2-1 Newcastle win, so you got a point. I unfortunately didn't receive any points there because I did think this might have been a little upset, and it was 2-1, which I wasn't far off, to be honest. Because Birmingham, like you just said, gave a really good account of themselves. We now go on to the last 3 fixtures then. So we had Blackburn versus Wolves. Cal, you were very confident in Blackburn to get something from this game, but I was never confident after obviously watching them on the Tuesday night previous against QPR. I always had the backing of Wolves in that one. I think Wolves are going to slowly start to turn things around. But yeah, they got a comfortable 2-0 win. I predicted it to be 3-0.
Yeah,
But yeah,
I
what were
was.
your thoughts on that?
Again, I was trying to catch as much as possible while I was just before the build up for the big one next. And yeah, when they had that disallowed goal, Wolves did. No, Blackburn did. Sorry, early on. It was a bit like, oh, it's just going to be one of those days. And then Wolves obviously scored. It was quite early into the second half, wasn't it, that they scored? Or just before half time? I can't remember when. Maybe been 2 just before half time or 2 just after. I can't remember exactly now. And it was like, that was game. That was it written. I thought the Wolves weren't, they were just in the driver's seat from then on in. And yeah, fair enough to you. You predicted that. You said that was going to happen. But again, there's a lot surrounding Wolves at Blackburn at the moment, which we will touch on in a minute with your news. And I think that it's unlucky again. Like, I can't keep saying every game's unlucky, but I think you look at Birmingham and Blackburn, they're probably walking away from that game thinking we could have had more, we could have stolen something there. But again, that's football. They haven't, and into the hat go Wolves and Newcastle. But yeah, congratulations to you, mate. You had Wolves to win, but you just not the right score.
Yeah. So let's move on to the next one. I don't want to take the limelight too much. But Plymouth Liverpool, you obviously predicted 1-0 Plymouth. I predicted a
Yeah.
4-0 Liverpool win. And we all saw what happened. Plymouth got a fantastic result. A 1-0 win. It's incredible, really. Plymouth only winning. Have beaten more Premier League sides than Championship sides this season. But again, this is a real confidence booster for this Plymouth side because they're starting to grow a little bit. And I definitely can see this having such a positive impact in the dressing room. I look at Plymouth and they're down, obviously struggling, but with this cup run, morale in the changing room is probably going to be really positive, and they think, do you know what, we can go there, just push for it, get whatever we want. And I think that mindset will be taken into the league as well. And I think, who knows if obviously on the time of recording you
Millwall.
play tonight against Millwall. So that'll be an interesting one. But yeah, cracking result. Don't want to talk too much on Liverpool. It's so disappointing from them. I don't want to go on about them not playing enough first team players because they had enough in there to win that game. But I do think Arnie Slot maybe disrespected Plymouth and the FA Cup a little bit. But yeah, Over to you.
I
Your
totally
thoughts
agree with
quickly
you.
as you were
I'm
there.
glad you said that they had enough manpower on the pitch there to beat Plymouth, because they did 100%. They did. Like, I look at the likes of Chiesa, Luis Diaz, for example, Nunes, even when he come on, they just weren't offering enough. And again, I don't really want to talk about Liverpool too much because it was such a special day for the whole of Plymouth, everyone that supports Plymouth, everyone involved. It was such an important bounce. And before the game, I was actually asked in the pub, in fact, would you take a loss to Liverpool and a win Wednesday night? And I was like, yeah, bite your hand off at the opportunity. But now we've looked, and I've taken the other side of the story, is we've beaten Liverpool. We've got such a morale boost in the change room, like you said. We now have to. There's no doubt about it. We have to take this into the league. Millwall tonight is a massive game. And I to be fair, I'm positive. Obviously, you've got to stay positive in your team especially when they're struggling. But I just want to quickly ask you, from a I can't answer it because I'm obviously going to say it, but what currently, if you're looking at this Plymouth side with Muslik in charge, who I think has changed the whole complexion of the season for Plymouth, do you think there's a chance of staying up?
I definitely think there's a chance. I'd be stupid to say that there isn't, because you've closed the gap a little bit over the coming weeks. There is teams around you that I do think are better. You've got a massive game coming up at the weekend. I don't want to look further forward, but obviously you play Cardiff,
No, we've
who
got
are a
Cardiff in a
team
couple of
in and
weeks.
around
We've got
you.
Cardiff in 2 weeks' time. We got big run of
2
fixtures
weeks
though.
time. Sorry.
In terms of that, we do have them. Yeah, big run of fixtures of teams around us.
Yeah, so you've got a massive run of fixtures. I look at it. It depends on obviously what happens at Derby with the sacking of Paul Warne, and we'll go on to that later. Um, Anything's possible, but again, Portsmouth picking up results last night. It's going to be really
Yeah,
close. It will
we'll be
go
in the
down
same
to the
situation
end.
as we were last season, I think, if we are to stay up. But yeah, I think the big morale boost tonight, and I know this won't be out tonight, so it's not really going to make much of a difference. But we've got Millwall, tough game. They're in good form now. They've picked up some decent results. But Derby, not Derby, sorry. I think is it Derby? Somebody's got Sunderland. I want to say Luton, maybe. Yes, so it's Luton versus Sunderland tonight as well. And if Sunderland beat Luton and we beat Millwall, tall orders, we then off the bottom. And that is just a big jump in itself. Like, to be where we were 6 points behind any team. We're now close that gap up enough to catch up with Luton and can overtake them tonight. I think that will give the players the whole feel of the club, the atmosphere it will switch. It will be a Liverpool win. It'll be off the bottom in the space of 5 days. There's not a lot else you can really, in the space of 3 days, I suppose, if you're counting it like that. There's not a lot really else you can ask for as a Plymouth fan. But yeah, we'll move on now because I think we have touched on that moment. But yeah, I just want to say it was such a phenomenal day for everybody involved, and I'm so glad. City away next round, I will definitely be on that train.
Yeah, look, amazing, isn't it? But we'll touch on the final game. It was obviously Villa versus Spurs. You predicted a 3-2
Bold.
Spurs win. But again, a tough week, which we'll go on to shortly for Spurs. They suffered a 2-1 defeat to Villa. I've not got much to say on this because unfortunately I didn't watch this due to being at work. But all I can say is it's probably typical Spurs. I predicted Villa to win 2-1, so that's 4 points for me there as well. But yeah, I don't know if
I
you
did
caught the
actually
game at all.
quite a football weekend. Like, I tried to catch up with every game, obviously. But this weekend, I think I watched actually quite a bit of football, which was nice. But yeah, this was one of the games I did, in fact, watch. And it was, like you say, it was typical Spurs. But Ange is adamant that it's a run of injuries, which I get. But again, we're going to touch on it later. But bowing out of 2 cup competitions in the space of a week, your only opportunity now at a trophy is the Europa League. Unless unless they don't lose from now and Liverpool, City, Arsenal, Chelsea lose every single one of their games. But yeah, your only opportunity now is Europa League, and you're leaving yourself short. And I did say, admittedly, in the last pod that if they lost these next 2, then I think if you're Levy, you're looking at Ange and thinking, is he the right man for the job? He's convinced he is. Fair enough. You don't want, like we say, we always touch on it, 18-month cycles in football, and that's what Spurs are currently in. But yeah, can't take anything away from Villa. Sorry, a very, very solid side. Marco Asensio, for me, was debutant of the day. he was really good. I thought he lit up the game a little bit. He was trying a little bit. First game in English football, like first proper game in English football. He was given a little bit better than what he was getting as well. So that's always a good account for a player when they move over to England. And yeah, you can only wish the best for the two loanees in Marcus Asensio and Rashford.
Yeah, no, definitely. So rounding off them 6 games, then with the point system going, been quite a good week for both of us. It's actually 7-all. So we'll keep tracking that and we'll keep posting the document on our socials. And we're now probably going to go into this week's fixtures. So we got 3 from the Prem, 3 from the Championship, and we'll predict them. And we're going to link some of the news in with that, I believe.
Not a lot's happened really this week, has it? Not loads.
It's just a little bit easy. No, not much has happened this week. So, to be honest, I'll kickstart it with the Premier League. The one bit of news that I've got coming out from today, actually, is Kai Havertz, who looks set to be out for the remainder of the season with a hamstring injury. Now, we all know what the situation was in January with Arsenal. Every Arsenal fan was out there calling for a new striker because Kai Havertz isn't the man to lead the line for a title-winning side. Obviously, with Gabriel Jesus out injured as well, this leaves Arsenal in a bit of a sticky situation now, and it just grows stronger that Arsenal should have maybe just invested something in a striker this year. Didn't have to be a main man. But they needed something.
You've stolen the words from my
injury
mouth.
And situation.
You don't want to see a team suffer with injuries because injuries are never good for football. You want to see players playing. You want to see the best squads possible. But if you're Arsenal, you must be kicking yourself now. Why did you not just throw 10 million at a backup or something? Just and I get they're going to have youth players. They're going to have the quality coming through. But they're not going to have the experience to just even nab a goal, probably. You're looking at the likes, like I want to use certain examples, I want to use one main example, which kind of lit up football back then, and it's kind of nostalgic. But when Paco Alcacer, when Dortmund was suffering with injuries, and he went to Dortmund and he just lit it up for 6 months, and then went back to I can't even. I think it might have been Villarreal or Valencia. Who was that? When Seville was it the low move from Seville? It was one of those not top teams, but in that bracket, and then went back there and just was carried on normal life. I think if you're Arsenal, you probably should have gambled like that because it's not. If he doesn't play, he doesn't play. He's going back at the end of the season. Or if you chuck 10 million at him and then he sells for 7 million, it's worth it in my eyes to have just made a move for someone, and they haven't. And I don't know if it's going to really screw them over, but it's just not a great situation for Arteta and Arsenal to be in. But yeah, it's awkward, very, very awkward. And like you say, Jesus out injured as well. God.
Yeah, exactly. It's a difficult situation for Arteta now and for Arsenal, and it'll just be interesting to see what happens there. We'll touch on the Championship news that I've got in just a moment, but I think we'll kick things off with the first game, which happens
it's a big
on
Friday
night. So I've picked out Brighton versus Chelsea. We all know these sides met in the FA Cup, and that saw Brighton win 2-1. I actually had a few mates who were at the game, and they were really impressed with how Brighton responded, because obviously in the prior game to that, Brighton suffered a massive defeat, obviously, to Notts Forest, 7-0. And yeah, Brighton looked really strong in that game. Chelsea had some standout players. Moise Caicedo, I thought, was amazing, and I think he's had a really good season this year. But yeah, I think this is now a time that Chelsea are probably going to look for revenge, look to bounce back. But first, I just want to touch on Brighton and just ask you the question: what have your thoughts been so far on Brighton this season? Because for me, I think they've been a bit up and down, very inconsistent, and they currently sit 10th, just outside the European spots. Do you think they could push in there?
It's so awkward this season. It's a tough question because you look at the likes of Forest, you look at Bournemouth, that just to name the two, no one expected them to be there. So the teams like Brighton, Villa, Newcastle even are still in with a shout, but they're just the 2 places down. And that really can throw you off in the Prem because if you're not top four, like you would typically get the top four. If you're not there, there's 3 places potentially on offer. That's it. It's tough. It's a tough league. And for Brighton, I like you say, they're really up and down, but I don't think that's off any fault of their own. Nobody in a million years would ever have thought Forest would be sat third in the Prem, like near on chasing Arsenal, with beating Brighton 7-0 in that. Like nobody on earth. I mean, there's probably that one person like the Leicester League when someone put a bet on it. But do you know what I mean? It's not like that. Oh, they're always going to be behind the Arsenal, Chelsea, Cities, and Liverpools. Like nobody pitched Forest to be there. Nobody pitched Bournemouth to be doing so well. So for teams like Brighton, they just really are. And I'd even say Spurs, Brighton, Spurs, United, like they're big-ish teams that should be up there, and they're looking really mediocre and average just because the league quality is just going up every year. Um, but yeah, that's kind of my opinion on Brighton. But I just quickly want to touch on Chelsea because, like you say, they met in the cup, and I think for Chelsea, I'm disappointed they're out. Not from me as a personal standpoint. I think for them as a club, I, I don't think they're going to win the conference, which I've predicted, which somebody still hasn't done their TikTok yet. So I predicted them to win the conference, which I still think they will. They're not in the Carabao Cup. They're out of the FA Cup, and they're not going to win the league. So it's another trophyless season, and I get it's Enzo's first season, but the amount of money they've invested, and I get they didn't do much in January, this, that, and the other, but like it's just when you get to a point and you're like, where do you look for who's in the wrong? Because you can't be afforded to bow out of competitions as easily as Chelsea do. They need to be winning something soon for me, in my eyes. I just don't think it's really something they should be proud of to be like, yeah, we're back in the Champions League at least. Like you should be in the Champions League. You're Chelsea. You've invested this much money. You should be winning trophies nearly every season, but they're not. But that was just my kind of stand. What's your opinions, obviously, on Chelsea? I know you've got a little bit of thing with them because of QPR. But like I say it to you all the time. You hate the ones that are better than you, don't you?
Yeah, you're funny, mate. Yeah, look, I'm obviously not the best person to talk about Chelsea. But one thing I will say is actually I'm going to be on a bit of Chelsea's defence. I don't think a lot of people expected Chelsea to be where they are at the start of the season. But again, they looked really impressive, and there was one point in the league a couple of months ago where you were looking at them going, "Do you know what? They could actually be with a chance of being in a title race." But after that, they dropped off severely. Um, they're not sitting comfortably in the Champions League spots. They got City down, and Newcastle chasing them. Again, you say they're bowing out of trophies here and there. I genuinely just think
No, I
they were
agree
outplayed
totally.
at the weekend. Oh, not the weekend,
Yeah.
on Saturday night. But yeah, I don't think it's been a horrendous season, and I don't think it would matter even if they didn't win a trophy this season. It's like we said, it's Maresca's first year. It's got to, I know they've spent loads of money, but again, some of the money's been spent when Maresca's not even been there. Some of them, it's not his complete squad. So I think you've got to give the man time. And I think if he does make the Champions League, I think that's actually quite a successful season for Chelsea, considering where they have been at over the last 2 years. It's been a bit inconsistent. So I think that's
Yeah,
going to
I
be
do
really
agree.
positive for Chelsea.
Totally. Don't get me wrong. I'm definitely not pointing a finger at Chelsea, but just think they were maybe a little bit too easy in that Newcastle game. They were definitely too easily beatable last weekend, and they were outplayed again, admittedly. But I just think, yeah, this is probably a thing that they may look back on next year and be like, we could have gone more last year in the cups. But yeah, I suppose we'll have to see what the rest of the season has to hold.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. But also, what I can see in this game is Chelsea are going to be right up for it. Friday night, I Brighton have got to be on their top performance again. Chelsea are going to want a little bit of revenge and going to want to continue climbing up the table, and stay in them Champions League spots because they've got teams around them on form. And if Chelsea can continue to dip, then we might be talking about Chelsea differently in a month or two.
I think it bodes quite nicely onto our next game, doesn't it? The Chelsea game, because they know that one of the teams below them, who's chasing them, has to slip up because it's Newcastle versus Man City, and I think that kind of ties into our next little bit of coverage, doesn't it? Man City, Newcastle. Opinions, thoughts, feelings.
Yeah, look, I'm going to touch on City first. Obviously, look, as of recording, they lose. As you're pointing to the crest, they lose. They lost 3-2 last night to Real Madrid. Okay, disappointing result, but they got the next. They got the away leg next week. Last time we saw them in the league as well, it was obviously a hefty defeat to Arsenal, 5-1 defeat. City have been so inconsistent this year. We all know they're an aging squad and maybe injuries haven't helped them enough, but there's no excuses for City. This is a real tough test for them. I'm really impressed with like Newcastle and Eddie Howe's system. I really like the way he's got Newcastle playing, and also you look how much confidence Newcastle coming in to this game, beating Arsenal, knocking them out of the Carabao Cup, staying in the FA Cup, currently sitting sixth in the league, 2 points off the Champions League spots. Like Newcastle they're going to go into this game with so much confidence, and that to me is a big worry. If I was a City fan, I'd be worrying about this game because I can see Newcastle getting something from this. And I just look at City as well. After this game, they've got such a tough run. And I think this is where we're actually going to find out where City are going to be for the rest of the season. But yeah, I don't know what your thoughts are.
I was going to agree with both your things. You're on fire today. I'm agreeing with everything you've got to say. I was going to say the exactly same about City. I'll start with Newcastle, actually, because you started with Newcastle. Yeah, for me, bold statement, because they're not the most in form. I don't know how you'd word it without saying in form, but they're the most confident team at the moment, maybe. If that's the best way to put it. Like, they're coming in on very good form. As you say, they're making their first final in a good few years. They've got a beatable Liverpool side in the final, which it's a tough ask, but it's definitely a beatable side. If you're Newcastle, that is. Then you've got the game against Birmingham, which you knocked out. You're still in the FA Cup. You've got an arguably a winnable game in the next round of the FA Cup. You're in good league form, chasing that Champions League spot. You're playing against those depleted Man City side. There's no real reason why players like Gordon, Isaac, even Murphy aren't going to be well up for this game. Like Murphy, I want to touch on just a little bit, because for me, he was down and out when he last season or the season before, when he just didn't look like the player that we knew he had in him. And now I'm shocked by how well he actually is playing. Like, it still baffles me when I watch him. I'm like, am I watching the same player that I was last year or 2 years ago? You know what I mean? He's just completely turned the corner. And then on to City. I mean, they know they're out now of the FA Cup as well. So like they're not going to be going through in that after the next round. And they're coming in after Real Madrid lost last night, which was a very good game. I called it last night. Very, very good game, but they're just too open for me. Like last night, they had so many chances. Real Madrid, admittedly, City did too, but they just look too easy. And again, you said it's an aging squad, but 1 year shouldn't make all the difference. They were so good last season, and they've only all got a year older. It's not like they've aged more than that Liverpool squad from last season. They've not aged more than anyone else. So I think there's something going on there, and I don't know what it is, because they're still throwing cash at it like there's no tomorrow. They've still got Pep, arguably one of the best managers ever. They've still got probably the best number 9 in the world. Like, they've got all of this quality, but they're just not showing it. And I don't really know. What are your thoughts? Would you actually? If somebody was to ask you, what are your thoughts on why do you think City are performing so badly? If you could sum that up in 3 words, what would those words be? 3 words.
In 3 words, I couldn't sum it.
Do you know what I
I
think?
could not
No.
summarize it in 3 words because I don't know what is going on at City this season. It's been very up in the air. But yeah, like I said previous. I agree with everything that you've just said there, but I really do find that these next few games are quite season defying for them. You look at, they've got obviously Newcastle. This is their next 5 league games.
Don't not include the Plymouth
Newcastle
one.
at home, Liverpool at home, Spurs away, Forest away, and then Brighton at home. Like that's a tough 5 games for them. And yeah, touching on a bit of Newcastle, I agree with what you say about Murphy. He's been excellent, but just the general all-round squad of Newcastle is brilliant. And midfield, Joe Linton, Bruno, like that midfield that they've got at the moment is so good. Tonali in there, he's been really impressive since coming back. Like, and then you look at their front three of Murphy, Gordon, Isak. Like Isak is the best striker current form in the Premier
Tonali's
League.
got a bet on Newcastle to win the league. That's
and
why.
I just think that I think Newcastle got a real chance in this one, and it's going to be a really
100%.
tough game for City. But I think now we've spoke enough on that City Newcastle game. I think the next game,
the battle of the worst teams in England at the moment.
I wish we didn't have to speak about this game, because we speak about United a lot, but I don't think you can miss talking about Spurs versus United Sunday at 4:30. I'm obviously going to quickly touch on Spurs first, and then I'll let you talk about United. But look, what an awful week it's been for Spurs. Exiting 2 cups. I was really disappointed watching them against Liverpool. I really thought for some reason they might have had a little bit more fight, but my God, they just depleted in front of that Liverpool side. It was quite embarrassing. And Ange, I listened to him after every single press conference, and I generally believe that he knows that he might be on his last legs, because that's a man that doesn't know what is going on. He's so frustrated. You can see how frustrated he is with these results. Yes, Tottenham have been hampered by lots of injuries, but they've still got a good enough squad to be winning games. They're so inconsistent. It's mad. And do you think Spurs can turn this around? Because personally, I can't see it. I really can't see it, because Ange just doesn't change his system at all. Yeah, okay, he's tweaked it over the last few weeks slightly, but it's not enough. It's so embarrassing. Actually, I have no affiliation to Spurs whatsoever. I couldn't care less about them. But actually, watching Spurs is quite embarrassing.
Imagine what it's like to have family.
I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
I couldn't agree more, mate. It's abysmal. It is so bad. And please butt in at any point if you think I'm wrong. But I have to address the Spurs fans that if any are watching, how bad can your football team be at this moment in time? Like, the manager, it doesn't look like he even wants to be there, but he's on repeat in every press conference, and no fault of his own. He's got a team made of, like, they're made of cotton wool. How are they always so injured? And there's a lot of talk at the moment, like, what's going on in training? What are they doing differently to every other team? Why are they getting? And he's like, well, it's the pressing style we play. There's still no excuses for so many first team players to be injured so much as much as they are. I look at Van der Ven. He had such a cracking start, and I spoke to a couple of people on the weekend after the Liverpool loss, and they were like, "Yeah, but he makes loads of bombing runs forward." Well, stop him making the bombing runs forward. Stop him getting injured. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's got to be solutions in place at Spurs. When these players come back from injury, there must be a rehab program to be like, mate, when you're playing like this, don't do this because you're going to get injured. Van der Ven, what does he do? The first game back, oh, he's off again. And then he comes back last week, 2 weeks ago, whatever it is. Oh, and now he's picked up a knock and he's out for another month. Like, what possibly is going on? Like, if I'm personally, and I get it's not my job to play football, and I should not be getting this angry about it, but I'm not a professional footballer, right? But if I get injured at football playing Saturday league, Sunday league, and I injured for 2-3 weeks. The first game back or the first training session back, I'm taking it easy. The first game back, you don't necessarily push 100%, even though you should. But again, like I said, I'm not a professional footballer. But you nurse yourself. You know your body. Why are you like? I've got no words for how that Spurs team are just so inept at the moment. And I think that's the best word to describe them. Like they are just, and I dread to watch this game. This is a 4:30 game on Sunday. This should be the 12:30 on Saturday. This is the game no one wants to watch. Like Newcastle City is 3 o'clock Saturday. I feel for those fans because there should be 4 o'clock, 4:30. But yeah, that's my rage over about Spurs because it just infuriates me. I said about 10 minutes ago in the pod that you want to see players and teams fit, so they're playing the best teams possible every single week. And the Spurs, you may as well throw the 18-year-olds out there and give them just some game time because you know you're not going to win if you're a Spurs fan. There's no point in going for anything. Like, but yeah. Anyway, on to United. We talk about United all the time anyway, so I imagine it's going to be short and sweet. But over to you, mate.
Yeah, look, United, last time out, obviously beating Leicester in the FA Cup 2-1. But the last time we saw them in the league, it was a disappointing away loss at Palace, 2-0. United, since Amarin's come in, I do think he's got this side playing a lot better. Yeah, they might not have climbed up the positions that they liked, but in games you're seeing a little bit more positive than when they were under Erik ten Hag. I do think United will start climbing. I do think it's going to turn around, but obviously this process is going to take years for them to be back challenging where they should be. But yeah, Amarin's. I can't see United not finishing in the top half this season, and I do think improvement will start to come. They do have some quality players in there like Diallo, Fernandes, Garnacho. But yeah, this is a battle of two really out of form sides. I couldn't really, other than Diallo, out of both of these sides, I couldn't really say who has been a standout player for both sides.
I totally agree with you as well. Like, I think the Man United, it's showing a little bit of promise, but at the moment it's just not fully there, which is fair enough. It's going to take time. Amorim does have Everest to climb, doesn't he, really, when it comes to managing that squad and that club. But yeah, I do think they'll be on the up and they will finish in the top half. But I just want to quickly, one more thing. It's like you're looking at experienced players in both of those sides. You're saying like you can't really notice a decent player. I totally agree. I think the experienced ones that should be leading from the front there, Son being the biggest example for me. And in United, you're probably maybe looking at Bruno. Bruno's not really been performing to his ability. And again, I've picked two attacking players there to try and lead from the front. But Son and Bruno, I think for me, are having the two under par seasons. But yeah, that's kind of all I've really got on that.
Yeah, just about in there. You don't see a leader in either of them squads. There's no one there that has got control of that squad in the dressing room. There's no leader at all, and I think that's where both sides are struggling this season, for sure as well. And I think that's where both managers need to address, definitely in the summer. But yeah, this game could either be a real boring game or there's going to be lots of goals. But yeah, I think we'll say that in our predictions later. But let's move on to the Championship. I'm just going to touch on the one bit of news I've obviously got in the Championship, which involves Blackburn and Derby. So obviously we know at the start of the week, just before actually the Derby game at the weekend on the Friday, Paul Warren was sacked, which I don't think has come to a surprise because Derby have been really poor over the last few weeks. I think it was 1 win in 7. But I think it was more of a shock how it came because Paul Warren had done the pre-match press conference and then on the Friday he's gone. So I think that was a bit of a weird one. But Derby have reached the £500 payout.
Is it? Did you say £500?
Boss.
Oh, I was
Not
going to say,
£500,
I
500,000.
was like, but I did not see that at £500. I was like, wow, what have I missed?
No, sorry, 500,000. And I think there's a few little add-ons onto it, but John Eustace, if you're not aware, he was assistant manager there under Steve McLaren a few years back, and he also had a playing career at Derby. Blackburn have come out with a statement saying they're so disappointed in John Eustace to want to speak to Derby. I think it's a weird one because obviously he's going from a team fighting up there in the top half, in the playoffs, to Derby relegation candidates. But since Paul Warne has gone, Derby have picked up 2 results. But I said this, I think to you, was it last week in the last pod or the pod before? I look at John Eustace, and when he was at Blackburn, I don't see him being that interested. I said to you after the QPR game, I saw it just showed no emotion, and I just felt that there was, ever since he was linked with that West Brom job, it's gone a bit downhill for Blackburn. And for Blackburn, I don't know if this would be is the end of the world. I think they could bring in some a better face, really, a better manager, because I'm not too sure on John Eustace as a whole. But yeah, this is a good pickup for Derby. Great pickup, and I think this will help them build up the table slightly.
I agree.
But yeah,
it kind of goes on to our next bit of our game as well. But yeah, just quickly want to touch on that because I've heard a few things on my Twitter today and yesterday. Apparently, Blackburn Eustace asked for a new contract. Like, again, you don't know how much of this is true, but he asked for a new contract, was turned down. He then asked for more money in the summer. He was like, "Can we invest in the summer?" They said, "We can't." So he's asking for stuff. He's not getting it. You can kind of see why he wants to move. But then on the flip to that, why Derby? Like, again, you say he's been there, whatever, he's had a playing career, but they're struggling a bit, and you're probably set. You're probably in that relegation battle quite heavily if you're Derby, and I don't really know if this is going to be actually a beneficial move for his CV more than anything. But then, like you say, he's not actually a manager that shows a lot anyway. So is he too fast? Is he there just because he's got a bit of history? You never really know. But yeah, I just think it's a bit of an odd move, and I think it's good for Derby, bad for Blackburn. But then people could say the opposite. It could be bad for Derby, good for Blackburn. So it's one of those that can go either way, and it's all interpret to opinion. But yeah, for me, I think it's just a bit of a strange move for him as a manager, especially if he's considering his CV and future jobs. But should we touch on the first game?
yeah, we'll touch on the little derby of
Yeah,
Cardiff versus Bristol. I picked this game. Obviously, it's a derby game, and it's two sides at different ends of the spectrum. Really, you got Cardiff, who I'd say if I was talking about Cardiff 2 weeks ago, I'd be saying how impressed I've been with the turn in form. But last 2 games have been really, really poor for Cardiff. Obviously, a 7-0 defeat to Leeds, which was a big shock, to be honest, because that was then coming off that real good run, and then to get absolutely smacked by Leeds, and then a really disappointing result last night to Portsmouth, their relegation rivals. But I think Omar Ritz has done a great job. Obviously, he was the assistant to Eric Bullock before he got sacked at the start of the season, and I think he's taken this side up the table, because obviously at the start of the season it was looking really ropey for them. But yeah, they've got a few standout players in obviously Callum Robinson. He's got 10 goals this season. They've got a couple of good players like Chris Willock. He's just not been thriving at all since he's signed for Cardiff. I just wanted you. Do you think Cardiff have what it takes to stay
I
up?
really want to say no, purely off the fact that I want Plymouth to be more in that conversation. So I'm just saying that from a biased perspective. I really want them to drop points. But from a completely neutral head, I think they do. I think they will. I think if you had to pick three teams, I don't think they would be included in those three teams. So I mean that means I can't say they're going to go down. But yeah, I think they've just been lackluster all season. They're a team that we've seen in both of our lifetimes have pretty successful reigns in the Prem, and they're now just they're just it's at times like this you just wonder what is going wrong and what can be changed. What's an easy fix at Cardiff? You'd love to be a fly on the wall in either a meeting between their big bosses and the manager, just to be like, well, I wonder what's actually going on. What are the conversations being had behind the door at Cardiff? Are they where they expected they were going to be? Are they below par, or are they kind of on track at where they want to be? It's an awkward one.
Yeah, I'd say the club as a whole at the moment at Cardiff is we behind the scenes isn't great at Cardiff. I think that's very well documented. But look, they sit 2 points off the relegation zone with Hull. A game in have got a game in hand as well, so it's going to be really difficult for Cardiff. This game again, it is going to be a bit tough. But if we go on to Bristol City now, who again every season they're
They
finishing
finish
around that
between
13th,
13th every
14th
season.
spot. It's typical Bristol City. But look, they're currently sat in 10th. And Liam Manning's got them playing some really nice football. I like Liam Manning's way of playing possession football. And again, Bristol City have got some real good talent. The only thing that obviously puts them off, they lost their last game to Swansea at home. They lost 1-0. But their home form actually has been excellent this year. But their away form, it's not been great. Only 3 away wins this season. So that's a bit of a confidence booster for Cardiff. But yeah, look, they got Naki Wells, who is a championship veteran. We know what he can do on 7 goals, and I've been really impressed with him this year. I love Naki Wells, and also Adam Mehmeti. He's got 9 goals this season, and picking up a couple of 6 assists as well. So them attacking wise, they've been really good. But I more want to focus on the Max Bird and Jason Knight partnership in the middle of the park. I think they're 2 players that have played a lot of games in the Championship, not just at Bristol City, at their previous clubs. I really like them as a centre mid pairing. Create lots of chances. I think Max Bird's on 6 assists this season, and I'm really impressed with the additions they made in obviously the summer leading up to and to January. They look a decent side, and I think they're definitely in contentions
I
for a
agree. I
playoff
think
spot.
they're
What are your
just with
thoughts?
Bristol that you mentioned at the beginning there. They're just the most inconsistent team, aren't they? In the whole of the 92 for me. Over the last 5-6 years, they've just literally sat around the mid-table mark. They've been consistently pretty average, not really pushed on a lot. I think this season, like you say, they have shown sparks at home. Away form, not great. They've got a game tonight on the day of recording against Stoke at home, which is a big game for me as well, because obviously I'd like to see Stoke drop some points there in and around Plymouth. But that's a game for me they have to be winning. This could be, I think, is this? Let me get the league up as well, because this could be their game in hand on the team that played 32, haven't they? There's a couple above them that have played the 32, a couple that have played 30. So we're getting to that point in the season where there will be games in hand, games midweek. But yeah, I think if they win this, they jump up to 8th potentially tonight, which is a good going considering you're then a couple of places off the playoffs with then potentially a game in hand. When all the games level out again, you find out. But you're not too far off. And I think if you're Bristol, you have to be happy with where your club's at the moment, and especially the way they're playing football too. You've touched on a couple of their key players, but yeah, I think they'd be happy with where they are. And I think from a neutral perspective as well, it's nice to see them actually challenge for something rather than just sitting happily in the middle of the table.
Yeah, no, definitely, and lighting up the playoff spots. The playoff situation at the moment in the Championship is brilliant. So yeah, it'll be an
Well, on to
interesting
the next
one
one.
for sure. But I think that leads us on to the next one, which is obviously we've picked Millwall versus West Brom. Now, Millwall have had a turn in form massively, and West Brom, obviously, both sides pushing for a playoff spot. West Brom are currently in the playoffs. But touching on Millwall to start with, they haven't lost a game in, I want to say, 5. Like,
including the FA Cup.
4,
Yeah.
sorry, 4.
Yeah, so I was having my notes in front of me.
Yeah, but they look really strong.
Well, until they play Plymouth tonight,
Currently, obviously, I went.
That's going to eat me in the arse, isn't it? Brilliant.
But I went to watch. Obviously, then beat us at the Den, and I'm not impressed with like their style of. Obviously, we know the Millwall way. It's long ball. It's not effective football. It's not pretty on the eye, but it's effective. Sorry. And they get the job done, and I am impressed with their upturn in form because they were looking like they were heading down a little bit.
Yeah,
no,
I agree.
I
just want to quickly touch on because obviously we have them tonight. That long ball has been very effective for them, and the way they do play. But I think tonight that might be a different style that we see Millwall approach, considering Plymouth do have 2 6'4" centre halves in there now that just head everything. They can't kick it; they just head it. So that might be a little change in transition tonight for them. But yeah, I think the game on the weekend, having West Brom, so obviously Plymouth beat West Brom as well. But it's a game I think they'd probably be pretty open to trying to win Millwall. I think West Brom are good, but they're definitely a beatable side. We've seen them this season slip up on a couple of occasions. There's no reason why they shouldn't be in that top 4, top 3 fight, but they just do drop points pretty easily, West Brom, in fact. And away from home, I think that Millwall will definitely have a chance. Again, we're going to go on to our predictions, so I'm trying not to let on to too much as to what I want and what I think is going to happen, but I do think this is an opportunity for Millwall here to try and jump. They sit 14th, but they're not a million miles away from the playoffs, which is the typical championship. Like the league currently stands in front of me. We have Millwall on 40 points, same as Preston in 15th. They're only 5 points off the playoffs, and that's 14th separating to 6th. So it's ridiculous, that league. And yeah, I think if you're Millwall, you do 100% have to go for this game.
Yeah, no, I agree. They've got games in hand as well, so this is a game that they're really going to want to take on and go for the 3 points. But then I look at West Brom under Tony Mowbray. They're looking a lot stronger now. They've got some quality players in there. Tom Fellows being one of them. 11 assists this season. Such a threat going forward. Josh Maggio, he's obviously got 12 goals this season, but he's had a bit of I wouldn't say a dry spell, but he got a lot of goals near the start of the season and he started to slow down a little bit. But again, can't deny he's having a great season. I said to you last week, I think West Brom deserve to be where they are. I think they've got a lot of quality in that squad, and Tony Mowbray is only going to take them up further. They had a really good result against Sheffield Wednesday at the weekend, but they go into this game now without Carl Bartley, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see Carl Bartley out for a few more games than what he's been given with the elbow at the end of the game. But look, they've got a tough game tonight as well. As we're recording, they've got Blackburn, so that's the 5th versus 6th. I can't see them not winning that game, to be honest, after what's the form that Blackburn are in and the situation surrounding Blackburn. But this is going to be a really close game. It's always tough going to the Den. And yeah, I don't know which way this is going to go at the moment. I still need to think.
While we go on to our final game as well, which is probably the biggest game of the championship weekend. 2 teams that haven't lost in 5 going up against each other. I was recently up in Sunderland as well, as everyone that does listen knows. So it's quite a big one, isn't it? The Leeds versus Sunderland. I want to start because I just want to touch on Leeds quickly more than anything because they had such an impressive win, didn't they? 4-0 against Watford. Watford looks strong this season as well. The way they play is good. And Leeds have just bashed them from pillar to post, I think, there. 1 loss in the last 10. Again, it's a good stat. And they do sit pretty nicely at the top of the table, don't they? Admittedly, they're only a couple of points, isn't it? Let me have a look. Yeah, 5. No. Yeah, so yeah, it's 5 points away with a game in hand to Sheffield. So they're pretty comfortable. Again, we say games in hand is worse when you need the points on the board. But yeah, for me, that Leeds side at the moment is Premier League bound. If I'm being honest, I think they just look so calm and collected in possession. And I want to say, I talked about Melier a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about it January, I think, because we were talking about him maybe getting a move away. I think he's really stepped up. If I'm being honest, I think he looks like a keeper that is now coming into his own a little bit. The defense seems to have strengthened, and he's picking up some better performances in my eyes. But again, we'll see what the rest of the season has to tell for that young man.
Yeah, touching on Melier, look, there was obviously talks about after his mistakes that Cardalo coming in, but hats off to Daniel Farke. He's backed him, kept him in, and yeah, look, he's done a real good job. He's got a great defence in front of him. Don't get me wrong. But yeah, touching on Leeds as well, the goals just come from everywhere. They've got Joel Pirro on 14 goals. They've got Dan James scoring 2 last night, but he's on 10 goals this season. But the one player I've actually been really impressive over the last few weeks is Solomon. I think he just gets everywhere. He's on 7 goals now. And he, for me, looks like the biggest threat for Leeds.
I just want to jump in
stands.
for you there. Just want to ask you a question because I don't want you to move on from him. Do you think if they go up, they'll buy him? Try and buy him? Do you think Spurs will have him back?
Yeah, it's a difficult one. It's a very difficult one. I don't know if Leeds will buy him. But obviously, I don't think if they were to go out, they couldn't go into a season with just Pirro up top. They'd have to bring in a bigger name, to be honest. But yeah, I don't think there was. I don't know. I don't want to talk too much in front because yeah, I'm not sure. But again, look, he doesn't just score goals. He creates. He's got 7 assists as well. Overall, I'm just really impressed with how he's. I feel like he's grown slightly over the last month or two. So
I think if
yeah,
they
really
they go up,
impressed.
they should buy that Augustin again or whatever. When they spent 40 million on that chap, and he got like
Oh
one
God.
appearance, no goals, like £2 million per minute he played. Brilliant.
But look, Leeds sit currently 5 points at the top. Sheffield United, or Burnley and Sunderland do have a game in hand. But this is a game, if we touch on now for Sunderland, this is a huge, huge game for Sunderland. I think a lot of people wrote Sunderland off, including myself, actually. I didn't think they'd close the gap, but Burnley and Sheffield United over the last few weeks have been pretty poor. And Sunderland, again, the last few weeks have been pretty poor, but they've picked up a couple of results that have helped them close the gap. They sit, 2 points off Burnley. Do you think they could get top 2, first of all?
No, I don't think they have the general quality. I think they're definitely good enough to be in that conversation, but I do think Leeds are going to get it, and I do think Sheffield United. I think they both just have that edge when it comes to seeing games over the line. And I know they've hit a little bit of not bad form, that's definitely the wrong word, but ropey form, let's say, in the 2 teams above in Burnley and Sheffield United. But I just don't think Sunderland will make it. I think there's enough of a breather for the top 2 now to just continue on through. But I do think Sunderland, this is such a good season for them. Like, I know they're a massive club. They should probably be fighting in and around the Prem. But you can't take anything away from that side at the moment. They're in such good form, and I do think it's a matter of time before they go up. Yeah, that's my honest opinion. I don't think they'll make the top 2, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, I actually, with the form they're in, they're unbeaten in 10 games. I can see them pushing into that top 2. Sheffield United, I've not been impressed with over the last few weeks, and Burnley, yeah, they might be defensively solid, but attacking wise, they've been really poor over the last few weeks. For me, anyway. I expect a bit more from Burnley, but Sunderland, as it stands, is going to be a little bit different when this game's played, because obviously they've got a game tonight as well.
Come on,
against Luton,
Sunderland. Come on, Sunderland.
which they need to pick up all 3. which they need to pick up all 3 points. But yeah, Sunderland have been really impressed with this season, especially as we spoke about last week. Wilson Isidore, really impressed with him. Picked up a disappointing draw against Watford at the weekend, and Wilson Isidore did miss a massive chance, a 1-on-1. Again, I listen to a lot of other Championship podcasts, and especially the one podcast, the second tier, which I don't want to promote other podcasts, but I think they're
Very good, aren't they?
two really good guys talking about the Championship. And one of them states that Lefay, we know how good he is as a player, but Sunderland are playing him more out wide. And I don't think they're probably getting the best out of him because his passing range, his ability to just float in and out of games and really make an impact in a central position would be so much more effective. And I just don't think, I think they're just trying to fit him in at the moment. Obviously, we know they've got Bellingham. We know they've got some quality in that middle of the park, but I do think Lefay needs to be moved more central. But I can see Sunderland getting a result here. I really can. And if Sunderland do get a result, it's a massive statement.
I agree.
A massive statement.
We're going to go on to our predictions, aren't we, in a minute?
It'll be an interesting
on Sunderland, I think the Enzo Lefay move is such a good move for them, but like I say, I think they are just playing him in the wrong position at the moment. We may see that change. I mean, all it takes is one injury, and I reckon he'll be in the midfield again. But yeah, I think they're not getting the best out of that player because he is such a good talent and he's got such promise about him. So I would like to see him a little bit more just for the sake of watching him and watching him thrive. But yeah, without further ado, should we move on to our...
Yeah.
Do you want me to rattle on through?
Do you want to rattle
through mine and then you can do yours, same as last week? Okay,
yeah, why not? Let's do that.
Start with the top.
Let's start with
We're going to start with the Brighton versus Chelsea, aren't we? I'm going to go 2-1 Chelsea. I think Chelsea are going to return the favour. And then City Newcastle. I've been thinking about these while we've been talking, so they should just come off the tongue pretty quickly. Newcastle versus City. I'm going to go 3-1 City. Yeah.
3-1 City.
And then we have Spurs versus Man United. This is big. I'm going 2-0 Spurs. I'm going bold this week. I'm going bold. We're 7-all at the moment. If I get a few in there, we're going to... Wow. We'll be turning it on. Bristol City versus Cardiff.
I can tell you're going a bit bold.
2-1 Bristol.
Okay.
West Brom versus Millwall. 1-0 Millwall. This is all... Yeah,
1-0
all
Millwall?
dependent on tonight's games as well, because we see Bristol City got a game, Millwall have got a game, and then Sunderland too. And then Sunderland versus Leeds 2-2. I think they're going to match the fixture that they had back in October. Yeah. You?
Wow. Yeah, so here we go then. So Brighton Chelsea, I can see this being a 3-1.
Yeah.
Chelsea win. I just think Chelsea are going to come with a bit of revenge. Man City, Newcastle. I'm going to go with a 2-1 Newcastle win. I can just see Newcastle continuing their fine form. Next game is Spurs United. I am going to go with a 2-1 United win. I think Amarin's going to get the upper hand in this one. Cardiff versus Bristol. I'm going to go with a 1-1 draw. 1-1 draw. Bristol, not great away from home, and I just think that Cardiff might pick up a point here. West Brom, I'm going to go with a 3-1 West Brom win. I know how good Millwall are at the Den, but I can just see it's turning around. And I'm going to go for a bold one. I'm going to go with a 3-1.
I knew you were going to say that. As soon as you said I'm going to go with bold, and I was like, he's going to pick the big Sunderland win. Well, our predictions are in. They are locked now. No changing them, and we look forward to hearing them next week. So, mate, that's kind of concluding another episode. Episode 10. We're now 10 weeks in. Well, not 10 weeks, more than that, because we missed obviously an episode, but we're 10 episodes in.
Yeah.
And it's been great, hasn't it? So we're going to look to do, maybe in a few weeks' time, we'll have another guest on, potentially. We'll have a look. Another guest on. Do maybe a little bit more interactive, a little bit, maybe a quiz or something like that. Another game, because we had our Plymouth combined. We've done our Christmas quiz. So maybe we can get something else put in for those. We're going to get some more on TikTok from Get Into Him, because he's scared, I think. He said that for months.
I will.
I'm going to, there'll be one up tonight on the day of recording from me. And if he doesn't have one on there by the next time, then we'll get him a forfeit. We'll get him a forfeit.
I'll make sure.
Because we just wanted Europa League predictions. It's all we want from you, mate. It's all we want. It's all I want. I want to hear who you predicted. It's getting too late now. You'll be into the round of 16 by the time you've done. You're just going to do it on the week of the final, aren't you?
I promise.
You better do.
I'll get it done.
And yeah, just if anyone is new or has listened to this, to where we are now, we're on Instagram, we're on Twitter, we are on TikTok, both Football Unfiltered on Instagram and TikTok, and then footy.unfilter on Twitter. Twitter's been our least active at the moment, however, we are looking to change that shortly. And then we're on Spotify for sure, and then YouTube too. Again, in a few weeks' time, when we've both had a little bit more free time on our hands, we're going to try to booster out to maybe Apple, maybe even Amazon. But at the moment, it's just been busy for both of us with other commitments, other work. So it's been a bit difficult for us to get our heads together and work out how we can actually move forward and start progressing this podcast onto maybe a little bit bigger and better things too. But mate, have you got anything else to add? You happy to round up? Fine. You can do the sign off, mate. You let me know.
Round up. Yeah, look, keep sharing, keep liking, please. We really appreciate it. But yeah, I think that's us done for today. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week.